I think I just figured out the entire season 5. And trust me, if you stay until the end, I guarantee this theory will make a lot of sense. After hours and hours of research, dissecting every single frame of Volume 1, I came up with an insane theory. And yes, it does include the wormholes Professor Clarke talked about, but the wormhole wouldn't be used for time travel, as most of you think. I actually wrote this before Netflix released the trailer for the second volume, and after seeing that trailer, I'm even more convinced my theory is true. I was always against the idea of time travel, and I think it would be a weak excuse to wrap everything up. As I've said in all of my videos, the final villain of Stranger Things is the Mind Flayer. Vecna was always his 5-star general, but the trick here is that the Mind Flayer let Vecna think he was in control. We know this is possible because of Season 2, when we saw the exact same thing happen with Will. For me, it wouldn't make much sense for Henry to want to go back in time to stop the events that transported him into Dimension X, because Henry is controlled by the Mind Flayer. So why would the Mind Flayer want this chain of events erased? If Vecna's final plan were to use the 12 children to create a wormhole to go back in time and stop young Henry from entering that cave, it would mean Vecna is in control of himself, when we know this isn't the case. Henry's original self was long gone, replaced by his flayed version. This would also create a direct parallel between Henry and Will, and deliver an important message to the audience, that love can change someone's life. The parallels between the two were always there. Both children were loners, sensitive, artistic, and misunderstood. But the main difference is that Henry was hated by his family while Will was loved, both by his family and his friends. That support is the main differentiator between the two, and it will play a huge role in the finale. In Season 4, we saw this theme of love versus hatred as the central conflict between Eleven and Henry. Despite the fact that Eleven got her powers from Henry, she was able to defeat him twice. Henry and Kaylee told Eleven that in order to draw power, she needed to fuel it with emotion. But despite their advice, Eleven didn't fuel her abilities with hatred like Henry did. She used love, and that's why she was able to overpower him. I believe this will also be the case with Will versus Vecna and the Mind Flayer. Vecna couldn't escape the Mind Flayer's control because he never had the love and support that Will has. Volume 1's climax was Will recalling old memories with the people he loved most in the world. Will draws his power from love, and that's why, in the final episode, he will be able to overpower Vecna and take control of the hive mind. This is why I don't think the wormhole will be used as a time travel device. We need this parallel between Henry and Will, which would represent the emotional climax of the final episode and deliver the core message. Stranger Things has always tried to convey the classic 80s cliché that love and friendship are stronger than fear, and that evil thrives in isolation but fades when faced with community. Wouldn't it be awesome if all the main characters fought together against the ultimate evil and finally won? For me, Stranger Things is clearly heading in that direction. Going back to the main point, I believe Vecna's ultimate plan is to use the 12 children to create a wormhole that will be used to merge the two dimensions, Dimension X and the Rightside Up. I won't go into complex scientific details because I want to keep this as simple as possible. In short, a wormhole is a shortcut through space-time that connects two distant points. A wormhole is also referred to as the bridge. In the Stranger Things universe, the bridge is represented by the upside down, while the two distant points it connects are Dimension X and the Rightside Up. For those wondering what I mean by the right side up, I'm referring to the real world. This is what it's called in the Stranger Things universe. The book Holly is reading, A Wrinkle in Time, is the most obvious clue the Duffer Brothers could include in Volume 1. Out of all the possible books, why choose that exact one? And it's not referenced just once, but multiple times throughout the show. Here's a rough idea of the book's synopsis. The story follows Meg Murray, her younger brother Charles Wallace, and their friend Calvin as they travel through space and time using a shortcut called a Tesseract to rescue Meg's missing father. Guided by the mysterious Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch, they journey to several planets, including Camazotz, a world controlled by the dark entity IT, a giant brain that enforces absolute conformity and suppresses free will. IT is part of a greater cosmic evil known as the Black Thing, which represents fear, hatred, and oppression spreading across the universe. In the end, Meg learns that love, individuality, and self-acceptance rather than power or intelligence, are humanity's strongest weapons against darkness. As you might have noticed, we encounter these exact same themes in Stranger Things. IT is clearly represented by the Mind Flayer, a dark entity that has absolute control over the hive mind, and whose only goal is to travel into the Rightside Up and subdue that world as well. In the book, the younger brother thinks he is strong enough to tap into IT, but unfortunately he ends up being possessed. In Stranger Things, the younger brother is represented by Will, who was already possessed by the Mind Flayer. And the final sequence of Volume 1 mirrors the book almost perfectly. Will now believes he is strong enough to tap into the Mind Flayer's power. But we all know it wouldn't be that simple because the story needs real tension for the final plot twist. So Will would be subdued once again by the Mind Flayer. In the Stranger Things universe, Meg is not represented by Holly as many people tend to believe, but by Mike. And Will's memories prove that. It was the power of love and self-acceptance that allowed Will to control the Demogorgons. And just like in the book, love and self-acceptance ultimately triumph over evil. As I said before, there are multiple references to A Wrinkle in Time in Volume 1. For example, in the classroom scene where the group learns that Derek will be the next target, we can spot a quote from the book on the classroom wall. All through the universe, a battle is being waged against evil, against the power of darkness. And what better quote than this one to represent the situation our protagonists are facing in Season 5? Also, when the camera shifts to Derek, we can see him building a Tesseract, the same device used in the book as a means of traveling through dimensions. Derek building a Tesseract is intentional evidence placed by the Duffer Brothers because, let's be honest, a kid building a fourth-dimensional cube isn't something you normally see. Even most adults don't know what a Tesseract is or how it works. Yet somehow a 10-year-old is making one as a hobby? But the most telling clue about A Wrinkle in Time is the discussion between Max and Holly. When Max describes the situation they're in, Holly immediately says it sounds like something she read in the book, and that the place they're in feels like Camazotz. And did you know Episode 6 is titled Escape from Camazotz? I mean, what more evidence do we need? Another important detail in Max and Holly's conversation, and the reason I don't believe time travel will be involved, is when Max tells Holly about Henry's high school memories. Holly asks, like time travel? And Max immediately replies, no. Time travel here is what we call in cinematography a red herring, a narrative device intentionally used to mislead the audience and distract them from the real truth. It's commonly used in mysteries and thrillers to build suspense and create a surprising twist. It's a false trail, designed to send viewers chasing the wrong theory until the big reveal. Now that I've shared some of the lore behind A Wrinkle in Time, let's see how it fits into the Stranger Things universe. As I said earlier, Vecna wants to use the 12 children to create a Tesseract and merge Dimension X with the Rightside Up, allowing the Mind Flayer to enter the real world and subdue the planet to its will. Vecna had a similar plan in Season 4, but back then he believed he only needed 4 sacrifices to open 4 portals at the cardinal points, which would intersect in the center and form one massive gate. Unfortunately for Vecna, that plan didn't work, possibly because the Mind Flayer's power is simply too vast, and that's why he now needs something stronger. That's why he needs to build a Tesseract. As I said, a Tesseract is a 4-dimensional cube with 16 vertices, 16 points. If you're wondering why Vecna kidnapped only 12 children, this is also a red herring meant to make you think the plan is time-related. 12 children equals 12 hours on a clock, and we all know Vecna's obsession with clocks. But in reality, Vecna kidnapped only 12 children because he already had 4 sacrifices from Season 4. Those 12 children taken in Season 5, combined with the 4 sacrifices from Season 4, equal 16. Exactly the number of vertices in a Tesseract. Now, the reason Henry goes through all the trouble of handpicking the kids and gaining their trust is explained by Professor Clarke. In his lecture about wormholes, he says they are extremely unstable. This is why Henry wants to befriend the children. He places their consciousness into an altered state where everything feels safe, where they believe their families will be saved as well. Henry needs the children to be as obedient and emotionally aligned as possible in order to keep the wormhole open long enough for the Mind Flayer and the Demogorgons to pass through. A stable wormhole in physics requires equilibrium. Any extreme force, energy spikes, explosions, or structural collapse causes it to destabilize. The bridge opens through emotional resonance, not violence. Moments of deep connection, calling a name, shared memories, love, create alignment between minds and realities. That alignment is what allows the tunnel to form. This is why Henry needs all the children to remain inside the house in harmony. Any moment of tension could disturb the equilibrium of the wormhole and cause it to collapse. As mentioned earlier, a wormhole is also called a bridge between two places, and Episode 7 of Volume 2 is titled exactly that, The Bridge. The Duffer Brothers have said that Volume 2 will take place mostly in the Upside Down, and by the end of it we will learn the truth about what the Upside Down really is. That it's a wormhole connecting Dimension X and the Rightside Up. In physics, a wormhole connects two distant points in space-time, and crucially, the inside of a wormhole does not follow normal time flow. That makes the bridge a pause point. Not forward, not backward, but suspended. This is exactly what the Upside Down is, and it explains why it's frozen on November 6th. The moment 11 touched the Demogorgon in the void, she created a wormhole between Dimension X and the Rightside Up. Here's a page from A Wrinkle in Time in which Mrs. Watson explains the importance of a wormhole. You can pause the video to read the full passage if you want. In short, she uses the ant example. It would take an ant a very long time to travel from one hand to the other by walking along a rope. But if you bring your hands together without letting go of the rope, the ant arrives instantly. That's what a wormhole does. It brings two dimensions closer together, making it easier for the Mind Flayer and the Demogorgons to reach the Rightside Up. This will be the main plotline in the upcoming volumes. It might seem like the simplest solution is to destroy the Upside Down, but things aren't that easy. If you sever the bridge right now, you lose everything and everyone still connected to it. That means losing Will, Max, Holly, Derek, and the rest of the kids. Before closing the bridge and destroying the Upside Down for good, they first need a way to free everyone from the Mind Flayer's influence and bring them back to the Rightside Up. Now, after seeing the trailer for Volume 2, I'm even more inclined to believe this theory is true. Dustin says that everything they knew about the Upside Down is wrong. The group's initial belief was that the Upside Down is the source of all evil, the place where Demogorgons and the Mind Flayer were born, and the world Vecna described as untouched by mankind. As viewers, we already knew this wasn't entirely true. We knew that Dimension X and the Upside Down are two completely different dimensions, and in Volume 2, our heroes finally learn this as well. This is the huge revelation Dustin has. The Upside Down is actually the meeting point between the two dimensions. I believe the massive surge of energy Dustin and the others see at the laboratory is exactly that. The wormhole beginning to form. This would also explain why the energy appears to melt everything around it, with the exception of Nancy and Jonathan. When you look closely at this scene, that mass of energy closely resembles the God particle from Dark, which, by the way, I absolutely loved. In Dark, the God particle represents a wormhole that allows characters to travel 33 years into the past or future. I won't dive into all the science behind the theory, but the core principle is the same one Professor Clarke explains. The key difference between Dark and Stranger Things is that the God particle in Stranger Things wouldn't be used for time travel. Instead, it would be used to merge the two dimensions together. We also see a shot in the trailer that strongly suggests Dimension X finally merges with the Upside Down. So this is how I see the events playing out. Episode 6 would focus on Max, Holly, and the children trying to escape. Holly would return from her meeting with Max just before Henry comes back with the other kids. Henry notices Holly's knee injury and asks her what happened, but Holly tells him she fell inside the house. Henry believes her but remains skeptical. Later, he discovers that his spyglass is missing and realizes Holly didn't listen to him. She went into the woods and met Max. Because of this, Henry locks Holly in a room, isolating her from the others. He can't risk disturbing the spirits within the house and destabilizing the wormhole. The one who comes to Holly's rescue is none other than delightful Derek. Remember, Derek already knows the truth about Henry, that he's Vecna and what he's planning. When Derek notices Holly is gone, he knows something is wrong. After Derek saves Holly, she runs into the caves, where she tells Max everything. I think Henry found out that Max and Holly met, and that he sent demodogs to the hospital to finish Max for good so she couldn't ruin his plan. But luckily for Max, Lucas was there, ready to protect his girlfriend. I believe Max will wake up in Volume 2, possibly as the climax of the volume, and she will share everything she learned from the memories. This will allow the group to finally understand how to move forward, and this is where Collie comes into play. Once they learn that Henry is afraid of the cave and cannot enter it, Kaylee could create a false vision of the cave surrounding Vecna, immobilizing him at a critical moment. This would give our heroes the opening they need to accomplish something major, perhaps saving the children or disrupting the ritual entirely. This is what I think all those scenes with Holly and Max represent. After Holly escapes with Derek's help, she goes to Max, and Max teaches her how to hide within her own memories, just like Max hid from Henry. The final scene with Henry, when he's glitching and transforming into Vecna, is the moment when Vecna finally catches Holly. This is also when the massive explosion happens. Holly becomes the final piece added to the wormhole, and Vecna's plan is finally set into motion. That huge burst of energy is the wormhole being fully finalized. Based on the trailer and the fact that we only see Holly there, I believe Max escapes from Henry's mind, wakes up in the real world, and tells the group everything she knows. The information they learned from Max, combined with Dustin's revelation about the Upside Down, allows them to piece everything together and realize Vecna's ultimate plan. This is why we see them storming the military base. They understand how important every second is. They need to get into the Upside Down to stop Vecna's plan. Because of this, I also believe Max is in Murray's truck with everyone else. Later in the trailer, we see the shot of Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan at the top of the radio antenna in the Upside Down. As I mentioned in my previous video, based on their clothing, this scene takes place after the base infiltration. The terrified looks on their faces, especially Dustin's, suggest the realization that their plan failed and that Dimension X has finally emerged within the Upside Down. I believe they're witnessing the sky cracking open. Another thing I'm almost certain will happen in Volume 2 is the reveal that Dr. K is extremely important. At the end of Volume 1, we were about to learn who Dr. K really is when Eleven was about to say her name. But Dr. K interrupted her, clearly setting up a major reveal. It also wouldn't make sense to cast someone as significant as Linda Hamilton for such a small role, or just as a Terminator Easter egg. So far, we know Dr. K is a researcher who appears to specialize in Dimension X and everything connected to it. She also seems to be around the same age as Dr. Brenner. My biggest guess is that she was Brenner's partner on an experiment, possibly Project MK Ultra itself. MK standing for Martin and K. Dr. K is extremely knowledgeable about this subject, especially when it comes to Eleven. I believe Brenner told her everything about Dimension X, about Eleven's powers, and about Henry, but that she was led to believe Henry was dead, killed by Eleven that night at the lab. That would explain why she's so focused on finding Eleven. If you pay attention, Dr. K repeatedly says she needs the girl fast, and that the girl is the only one who matters and can help her research. I think Dr. K always knew about the possibility of merging the two dimensions. She may have even been connected to Project Philadelphia. She likely believed Henry was gone, and that Eleven was following in his footsteps. Since Eleven was the one who helped Henry regain his powers, Brenner may have twisted the story when he explained the events to her. There's a brief shot in the trailer showing Eleven in her sensory deprivation suit from the lab. So I'm guessing that by the end, the military will realize Eleven is an asset, not an enemy, and will help her in the fight against Vecna. One thing is clear, Dr. K's reveal will be crucial to the storyline. The final thing I believe will happen is that Eleven will lose her powers at the very end, after the Upside Down is destroyed. In Season 2, when the Mother Gate was closed, all the Demodogs died because their connection to the Mind Flayer was severed. In the same way, destroying the Upside Down, or even the Mind Flayer itself, would likely result in Eleven losing her powers. Eleven's journey has always been about coming to terms with her humanity and learning how to live without her abilities. In Season 4, we saw how deeply losing her powers affected her. I believe that was foreshadowing, that this time she'll be ready, and she'll be able to live a happy life without them. I think we'll get the happy ending we all want. No one dies, everything is resolved, and the story ends in the same classic 80s style that Stranger Things has always embraced. Let me know what you think about this theory, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll try to respond to as many of you as I can.